The story you are about to hear is a compilation of documented true facts featuring historical characters, events, or places that has played a role in shaping history. Please sit back and listen as I recite this narrative for you. Rodney Alcala is an American serial killer whose good looks and high IQ helped him lure his victims. His 1978 appearance on the television show The Dating Game resulted in his nickname of the Dating Game Killer. Serial killer Rodney James Alcala murdered at least 9 women and girls across the United States in the 1970s, though his true death toll could number more than 100. He spent time in prison for sexual assault and other crimes in the 1970s, but continued to rape and kill when he was free. The autopsies of some of Alcala's victims revealed that he would strangle women, then wait for them to regain consciousness before the final kill. Alcala also sometimes arranged the corpses of women he'd murdered in poses. In 2010, photos taken by Alcala decades earlier were made public to try to identify other victims. He has been behind bars since his July 1979 arrest for the abduction and murder of a 12-year-old girl. Alcala was sentenced to death in California, but is unlikely to face the death chamber as the state has stopped all executions. Rodrigo Jaquez Alcala Bucor was born in San Antonio, Texas on August 23, 1943. His family moved to Mexico when he was around 8 years old, and his father abandoned them while they were in Mexico. Alcala, his siblings, and mother later relocated to Los Angeles. At the age of 17 in 1960, Alcala enlisted in the U.S. Army and became a clerk. Things started to go very wrong in 1964 when he was discharged after suffering a breakdown and being diagnosed with an antisocial personality disorder. Alcala went on to study at the UCLA School of Fine Arts, from which he graduated. He first came under police scrutiny in 1968 following the rape of 8-year-old Tali Shapiro. He had been seen luring the girl into his apartment but was able to flee before the police got there, leaving the girl beaten and raped. Alcala then enrolled in the NYU Film School, studying under Roman Polonsky by using the name John Berger to put the police off his trail. In 1971, he was included on the FBI's most wanted list. Some girls at an arts camp in New Hampshire recognized their counselor, who was using the name John Berger, from this list. They told the camp's dean, and Alcala was soon arrested, though he was able to plead to the lesser charge of child molestation and served just 34 months. Over the next several years, Alcala continued to be arrested for a number of crimes, including assault on a young girl and drug possession, and he later admitted to knocking a 15-year-old girl unconscious and raping her while posing as a professional photographer. His past conviction for a sexual assault prompted California police to interview Alcala in March 1978 as a potential suspect in the Hillside Strangler killings, another set of serial murders that occurred in California in the 1970s. Alcala was cleared of those crimes, and police did not realize they had actually spoken with a different serial killer. Although he had been convicted of rape and was therefore a registered sex offender, he was to become a contestant in September 1978 on The Dating Game, a televised dating show. At that time, he was a convicted child molester, but the show did not run a background check. It is believed he had already murdered 2 women by this time. He was described by the host of the show as a photographer who liked motorcycling and skydiving. Remarkably, Alcala won the date with the Bachelorette, Cheryl Bradshaw, but she thought he was creepy and refused to go out with him. Jill Barcombe was a runaway from New York when she disappeared in 1977. Her body was discovered in a Los Angeles ravine, and she had been rolled up like a ball. At first, investigators thought she may have been a victim of the Hillside Strangler, but DNA evidence would later show Alcala to be responsible for her death. Also murdered in 1977 was Georgia Wickstead, who had been bludgeoned to death inside her apartment in Malibu. Charlotte Lamb was murdered in the laundry room of her apartment complex after being raped and strangled. Jill Parenteau was also linked in her apartment in Burbank. These 4 murders were all linked to Alcala through DNA. Another murder that took place in 1977 was that of Pamela Jean Lamson. Pamela had gone missing after traveling to Fisherman's Wharf, where she had arranged to meet a photographer. Her body was found near a hiking trail in Marin County, naked and battered. Christine Ruth Thornton also disappeared in 1977 in Wyoming. Her body wasn't found until 1982, but her remains were unidentified until DNA testing was done with samples from her relatives. An autopsy showed she had been around 6 months pregnant when she was murdered. Alcala later claimed that he did take the photographs of Christine but denied murdering her. 12-year-old Robin Samso had disappeared on June 20, 1979, somewhere between her ballet class and the beach. Her body was discovered several days later, dumped in the Los Angeles foothills. Detectives had been circulating a composite sketch of the man suspected of killing Robin Samso, and as a result, Alcala was identified by his own parole officer. Officers searched his mother's home, during which they located a receipt for a storage locker belonging to Alcala in Seattle. When they went through the locker, they discovered hundreds of photographs of young girls, many of which were nude, and a pair of earrings identified as belonging to Robin Samso, as well as another pair that later would be traced back to Charlotte Lamb through DNA testing. Alcala was arrested on July 27, 1979, and charged with Robin Samso's murder. He went to trial and was found guilty, receiving a death sentence in 1980. In 1984, the sentence was overturned because the jury had been informed of his previous crimes, which wasn't appropriate. It was overturned a second time in 1986 as a result of claims that a witness had been hypnotized. In 2003, Alcala was linked to 2 further murders through DNA. By 2010, he had stood trial for 5 murders: Robin Samso, Georgia Wickstead, Jill Barcombe, Charlotte Lamb, and Jill Parento. Alcala opted to represent himself during the court proceedings. In February 2010, he was found guilty of all 5 murders. He was sentenced to death in March 2010. Alcala was found guilty of all 5 murders and remained on death row. In 2011, he was indicted for the murders in New York of Ellen Hoover and Cornelia Criley, and he pled guilty to both in December 2012. In 2016, Alcala was charged with the 1977 killing of Christine Ruth Thornton in Wyoming, though prosecutors opted not to extradite him to stand trial. There are numerous other cases Alcala is a suspect in, but many won't be prosecuted because he has already received the maximum sentence possible: death. Alcala's exact death toll is unknown. Some authorities believe he murdered around 50 people. Others think he may have taken as many as 130 lives. Alcala was a tall and good-looking man who often told women he was a fashion photographer who wanted to take photos for a contest. His intelligence and charm could make him very persuasive. With Alcala posing as a photographer as the main component of his MO, investigators found over 100 photographs in his possession following his arrest. They released 120 of this to the media in the hopes that the public may be able to help identify the women and young girls in the photographs. Police wanted to know if any of them were also murder victims. In the first weeks of the photographs being made public, around 21 women came forward to identify themselves. In 2013, a family member recognized the woman in one of the photographs and identified her as Christine Thornton, 28, who had been found murdered in 1982 in Wyoming. Alcala was eventually charged with the murder, but was unable to travel to Wyoming to stand trial due to ill health. Along with the photographs released, there were an additional 900 photographs that were too sexually explicit to be shown to the public. Hey everyone! I just wanted to express how grateful I am that you took the time to listen to my narration. Hopefully you enjoyed it. I am Twisted Mind and please enjoy the rest of your day. Salamat!